I'm looking at that web page that I linked.
Stop.
It has all the name changes, and it starts out, from time to time, Microsoft renames products.
Classic.
Every once in a while, yeah. And then it's a list of 400 of them. Yeah, once in a while.
Or make him an attendee.
Wah, wah.
Mike, nothing has changed.
It's not so
bad.
Make
fun of Todd.
It's not so bad being an attendee. It's not so bad. I'm here to tell you.
Oh my gosh. All right. We're going to leave some of that in, but welcome everybody. It's July 10th, 2024, and this is 100th episode of Ask Sympraxis. And Derek thought up and Patrick thought up too late that we needed the little popper things, but we didn't do that, so it's not done. We have
virtual
all the
poppers.
Virtual poppers. We have all the current Sympraxians and some historical Sympraxians. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining us today. All here today. This is a Ask Me and Ask Us Anything episode. Thank you for the virtual, Krista. This is an Ask Us Anything. Hopefully you came and brought your topics that we could just chat about, but we do have a few little walking down memory lane slides. Yes, Virtual Poppers is a band name. We'll add it to our list. It's very long. So our first episode was April 20, 2020. And can anybody guess why we did it? Does that date ring any bells for
2020,
anyone?
yeah.
What was going on? Yeah.
What was going on?
April celebrating 2020. April.
Yeah. It was a fun time. Our first question that we got was, is there any preliminary or prescriptive guidance for dealing with guest users and supporting teams, both as the host system and where your users are the guest of others? That is still a relevant question 4 years later, sadly, but surely. Do we have anything more to say about it? Mark, do you have anything more to say? You always have something to say, so I'm sure you have more to say.
Well,
noting Marcel just showed up. So hi, Marcel.
Yeah, and Marcel, this question may well have come from
been,
you. Yeah. I mean, I think it's still a tricky thing to understand what the policy of an organization ought to be around guest users. I know there are still some that don't allow any.
Mm-hmm.
There are some who don't manage them at all, which would be the two extremes. And I think that the more successful people have been the ones who do allow guest users, also known as external users, because Microsoft never uses the same term twice.
Or B2B users.
Or B2B users, which are a little different, but didn't exist at the time. Good point, Marcel. But sort of managing that set of users over their life cycle, which is something that wasn't necessarily even a thought in the beginning. It was just, should we open the door or not? And our pals at Orchestry have a great set of tools for that. I always want to give them a plug.
Yeah, I was going to sort of just say that since this happened, I think what we've seen from change perspective is we've seen some tools come down the pipeline that are more formalized for helping that. Like you mentioned, Orchestry has great tools for this. ShareGate also has some tools for this, at least for monitoring and reporting on these tools. Yep. Some other things that have happened, though, that are a little more recent is we've had the idea of multi-tenant organization. So there's now a place, it's in preview, but it's in the tenant configuration that allows you to say, hey, this is a main tenant and these other tenants are part of, we want to sort of work with them. And when what you can do is sync users between the two tenants. And when you do that, instead of having a user show up in your Azure Active Directory as a guest user, they can show up as a member. And what I learned from researching that piece of technology is that you can actually today, if you have a guest user, you can go into Azure Active Directory and change them from a guest to a member. And it changes the way they can behave in your tenant, which is very interesting. I don't know that that's something that people talk about very often, but it's interesting that you can do that you can sort of say, hey, this is a guest user, but I'm going to elevate them to a member so that some of the places where being a guest is kind of not great experience, they can act as more of a member of the organization. So it's an interesting thing that you can do. And so that sort of changes the paradigm of being a guest in the system. And so that's definitely grown up a little bit in the last 4 years. So that's
Hey Julie,
cool.
is there any timeline on when that's going to be out of preview, or is it just when it's done?
I
it's
don't
done?
have I don't have any details at the moment. I actually been working with Bob German on it. We've been playing with it because we are interested in how multi-tenant applications are going to work, and how applications even in general are going to work. Like if you deploy just like SharePoint Framework or whatever, how are those users that are guests in your tenant but part of this multi-tenant organization sync going to work? I mean, we have theories given the fact that when they are coming in from another tenant that you've marked as part of this multi-tenant organization, we have a theory that because they are members, they will actually be able to see the SharePoint Framework solutions. Whereas now, if you have guest users and you have a SharePoint Framework solution, unless you go make special changes, i.e., add all guest users to have read access to your tenant app catalog, and or do a global deployment of, so use a CDN for your SharePoint Framework packages, the guests can't see those solutions. There's other ways around it too. But the point being, like, we're sort of trying to investigate all of those different ways where extensibility might be caught up in this whole multi-tenant organization. So it's something we're investigating. I don't have a ton of information more at this point on it, but we're looking to present that in August in DC. So we need to get on the stick and get it all figured out. Anyway, so that's some news changes. Todd, mute Todd. Somebody mute Todd quick.
No, hands up. Everybody hands up. So Mark had said earlier that the guest users and external users were the same thing. And that's mostly true, except Microsoft has this thing called external access users, which are Microsoft users that come in externally. But to make things completely muddied, guest users show up in Entra ID with the external tag in their name, which is not an external access user, it's a guest user. So I'm going to throw a link in the chat that kind of tries to straighten that out a little bit.
That's a good idea.
But it's every bit as confusing now as it was 4 years ago. A phrase that you will probably never utter again.
Marcel
has a question. He's asking us anything.
So actually, this is a comment. For many, many years, I've had trouble at times when you invite guest users or something changes on their part. The problems are so deep that some of my clients actually use Ignite for external sharing and SharePoint for internal stuff. So for example, somebody's cache may get clogged and they will no longer be able to log in to our site because they have a credential that's stuck from somebody else's site.
Yes.
And I have been on Microsoft's case for 10 years to fix this, and they have not.
I know you have.
Yeah.
You're a leader in that case.
I want to say we did at least 2 or 3 episodes on managing working in multiple tenants and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Which is not what you're saying, Marcel, but definitely, working.
But it ends up
Okay.
being very similar because in this so-called modern work world, most organizations want their edges to be somewhat porous. They want to be able to invite people in and go into other people's places and work where they work. And while everything demos great in practice, Marcel, I think you found more warts on that toad than just about anybody.
Casper, what do you have to add or question?
I was just wondering if we can change an account from being a guest to being a member, if that's going to mess up our problems with data regency So if my data, I'm a German member, and all of my data is supposed to be on my German tenant, it must be within the German state. If that's going to mess it up, that could be a major problem.
Yeah, it could. I don't deeply understand what that does. Just notice that I could do it and need to research more what happens with them. But of course, I don't have a multi-geo tenant, so it's not something I can particularly test. But yeah, it could absolutely screw things up, I think. All right, so another thing we thought might be a fun conversation starter, and this maybe could just take the rest of the time. Microsoft marketing strikes again. Changes that have happened since 2020. And this was a fun thing for us to converse about, because as it turns out, and I thought this was before this, but Microsoft changed the name from Office 365 to Microsoft 365 right there in April, or right around the same time that we started this. So since we started, they have changed the name of Microsoft 365 from Office 365. We've had the infamous move from Azure Active Directory to Microsoft Entra ID. That one you can, I think that isn't as much of a rename as it is a elevation. I think they, under the cover, inside of Microsoft Entra ID, there still is Azure Active Directory is a thing, but Entra ID sort of covers more things than just Azure Active Directory. But anyway, that one has thrown a monkey wrench in all of our
I knew
Googling.
thered be more. Look at them coming.
I know.
I was waiting for
That's
that.
what we let it. That's why we left it open. Yammer became Viva Engage. Compliance Center became Microsoft Purview. Forms all became Forms, which is just a little throwback to our session a couple weeks ago when we have more things called Forms than we know what to do with. Okay, let's see what we got in the chat. Tara came. Project for the web and Project Online is, yes, that's a good one. Bing Chat Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot. Oh my God, Mike, why didn't we come up with this one on our own? Duh. Yes, Bing Chat Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot. And then we could just add in all the damn Copilots. Copilot with hyphens on the end. And then there's Microsoft Copilot and Copilot for Copilot. And I don't know, it's a very deep one. But yes, Todd has the link for product name changes.
Mother load there with
we're not mute him. We're not talking about him. Mike came up with SharePoint list to lists. This one, don't get me on this goddamn soapbox, because this is a problem one, because SharePoint lists, all that really happened is under the covers, they're all SharePoint lists. It's the UI that got a different name. So SharePoint lists got a new UI. That is the UI that they developed for Microsoft lists, which is SharePoint lists. God damn it. But whatever. So yes, you're right, though. It is a name change. Planner to do
spin you up, Julie.
And you're doing a great job. You're getting muted too. Just be careful. Planner to do in Teams. Planner to do Frankenstein. Good one, Carol. That's awesome. And Tara seconded that one. Planner is Planner or okay, do we have any more? I don't see.
Tara mentions Power Automate. That one happened right before, I think, we went on, because I looked at that one too, the flow to Power Automate and all that.
Oh, right. And isn't it under the cover? It's called Power. That's sort of like the Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Entra ID one, because Power Automate, inside of Power Automate are flows, and they still call them flows, but they don't call the product flow. Right.
Correct.
Well, technically they're not flows, but nobody can say it right because you don't create a Power Automate. So we all say flows, but
I thought in the UI it said flow.
No, in the UI it says
URL
flows.
is still a flow.
No, in the UI, it's my flows.
It's a cloud.
No, that's true.
A cloud flow.
They didn't really do it very well. They renamed it badly.
Shocking.
Well, yeah, but I think again it's meant because it's like a product name that overarches a bunch of things, or is their plan, but inside it's flows. So I mean, it's just sort of like an elevation of name. Skype to Teams, didn't that happen a long time ago though? Christy, you're right, but I think it's like a different product, and then they just deprecated Skype to become teams.
Information architecture, rest in peace. I love it.
I know, I saw that. I was like, I wish I could say that wasn't true.
Stream to stream and SharePoint, workplace analytics, Viva Insight. Yes, Mike, you're very good at this game, as I should have suspected.
Oh,
Sadie, Mike won the game.
You missed one there, Mike, though, because it went from stream to classic stream. The stream
Oh,
and SharePoint.
yes. No.
Mike Dixon, you're right. When they first announced Microsoft 365, it was a separate product. It was Office 365 wrapped with some other stuff.
With Windows.
But then because it confused the hell out of everybody, they actually started just using Microsoft 365 as the name for everything. But you can still buy Office 365
was just gonna say,
licenses, which makes it endlessly confusing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too, because they do have them, and it's just whether it has the Windows stuff. But there's other stuff built into the Microsoft 365 license that's not part of the Office 365 license. We found that out when we were looking at like moving from an E3 to an E5, and what does it include as far as like Power Automate and stuff like that, because E5s include some stuff, and you see there's a pretty big difference between the Microsoft 365 license and the Office 365 license. So they say it's a rename, but it's kind of not a rename too.
I can't believe they screwed that up.
Yeah, it made it so much worse. Anything else? Let's do where did the name change?
Is there an Intune? Wasn't there an Intune change name or a name change over that time?
Oh, there was, and I don't know what that one is. Todd, look it up.
I'm control Fing as we speak.
I'm doing it too, but I don't think I did it as fast as you. Endpoint manager.
No, Greg did that. Yeah. Greg mentioned it. Intune and
no, that was the old one.
Oh. Tara, you're right. Stuff is happening with Syntex. We just did that last week. Syntex is becoming SharePoint Premium. So that is another good one to point out. All right. We probably beat this topic to death.
And so stuff is happening, Tara, is about the right phrase, I think.
I'm looking at that webpage that I linked that has all the name changes, and it starts out, from time to time, Microsoft renames products.
Classic.
Every once in a while, yeah. And then it's a list of 400 of them. Yeah, once in a while.
And that will be the intro to this video later when I post this on YouTube. That'll be.
You can just scroll the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
On an endless scroll.
All right. So another fun thing, since we record these episodes and post them to YouTube, I thought it would be fun to go and look at what our most popular episodes are. I didn't put the numbers because that felt a little too like opening the kimono, but our most popular episodes, the migration from Stream Classic. I'm not giving you numbers, but let me tell you, by far, this was in front. So clearly, we got a lot of traction out of helping people migrate from Stream Classic to essentially your videos going into SharePoint repository. And whether he likes it or not, Patrick is now our expert. He's like, yay.
So for all the stream questions, we can point directly at Patrick from now on.
I love it.
That's right.
I love it.
That's right.
When requests come in for work, it's just going straight. It's really not even a thing anymore, right? Because it is officially deprecated. Right. It's all gone. It's done at this point anyway.
You haven't migrated? Next up, I'm sorry. Those videos are now gone.
Yeah, exactly. The next one.
But you're going to be the guy who tells them that whenever a question.
Perfect. I got it.
The next one was tips and tricks for customizing PMP Modern Search. And number 3 was an older episode, Modern PMP Search Web Parts. We covered these a lot because we use them a lot. I mean, I think it's almost the de facto install in every new client that we have is like, yes, and let's get the modern PMP Search Web Parts in your tenant because there's so many things that we can do to solve things without having to write a lot of custom code, but you can kind of get a custom solution, especially with templates. We have Casper on today, and he is one of the maintainers of that solution. So
Casper's just grinning over there.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm the most popular. I have to let you know that Learning Pathways is actually still the most popular install, though, just so we're all clear on that. So the it's not for long. That's not going to last. So these web parts are just fantastic. It essentially gives us back what we had in classic search web parts when we had, our on-prem servers or before they went to modern SharePoint in SharePoint Online. It gives us all that functionality to create search-driven solutions that we couldn't do before. So these things are super powerful. As I said, we use them everywhere. You can customize even the visualizations of your search results from all the way from using adaptive cards to just tweaking the template to, as of maybe about a year ago, I would say, Stefan Bauer and I worked together a little bit, and he built, it did some tweaks to the web part to allow it to even use the H2O library to build your custom visualization. So lots that you can do with search results and those modern web parts. It sort of gives you back kind of the script editor web part without having scripts. So yeah, you can't run scripts in it, but you get so much customization with it that it often doesn't matter. All right, number 4 was external sharing in SharePoint Online. And that sort of harkens back to our first episode, which was about guest access. So I think we've sort of beat that to death at this point, but it is definitely one of the ones that was super popular. And the 5th place was migrating your file share to SharePoint Online. This one is, I think, still happening, shockingly. You would think that everyone was at SharePoint Online, but at this point, but there's so many people that are still on-prem and still doing these migrations, even from even file shares. Yeah, Tara, nope. So that is also a really good one. Anybody else with any questions or comments or thoughts or things they want to talk about?
We have 21 people. We're going to go right down the line. We're going to ask every one of them what their question is.
So have your answer ready. Yep.
Have your question.
Just kidding.
Ready.
Don't run away.
We'll make Carrie go first. She's like, no, turning my camera off. I think she's actually frozen. Is she frozen? She's frozen.
She's sitting very still, so we think she's frozen, so we don't call on her.
She's like, don't call on me, whatever you do. Oh, poor Carrie. We love you.
So any questions from the crowd?
Carol still has to migrate finance. Yes, good luck with that. They just want their Excel spreadsheets. So as long as you can move their Excel, keep their Excel spreadsheets so that they can get to them, they will be happy.
Back on-prem from SharePoint Online. Interesting. That I would love to hear what the reasoning behind that is.
I can venture a guess.
Probably the rate of change.
And bugs. Casper.
And bugs.
Yeah, just a question about the finance. If we move those Excel sheets, oftentimes we have seen those being linked, and then on the file server you can do that pretty easily. But nowadays you have to change that a lot in order to make it work on SharePoint. Have you ever made a session about that? Because I think that might be the most prevalent question or problem when we have to move the finance people.
That's an interesting point.
I'm not sure there's a good answer right now still. Is there?
I've often found that it works as long as if you link them while they're in SharePoint. Like if you put the two Excel file, like if you link Excel files to other Excel files type of thing, if you put the 2 Excel files in the same library and then link them, that works and keeps working. So it's
migrating in where everything breaks.
Right. It's migrating. It's the migration part that's the problem, not that you can't link. And so I think it probably ends up being you have to identify where all those Excel sheets are that are linked. You have to know ahead of time that these set of Excel libraries, Excel workbooks are linked to other Excel workbooks, and go back and manually manage each one of them. I don't think that's a simple fix for that.
Yeah, I think the tooling is really bad on that.
Yeah, I don't know that there is a way to do that's an interesting thing. Like, I don't know that I'm going to go too deep on it because it would be a lot of work, but I wonder if there is a way to programmatically loop through Excel sheets, decide that there's a link, and update the link. I'm sure you could do it with code, but it would be, how difficult would that be, and would it work, and what would the link be? You'd have to sort of test what it would be. So that would be interesting. Oh, Dan is nodding. Dan, you could have come off mute and just corrected me. Okay, so you did an open XML scripting thing to fix them. All right, cool. Excellent. But it is a headache. Yeah, very much.
Mike Dixon has his hand up. He's being very polite.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Hi.
Hi. So I have a question for you guys that falls under that you got to be kidding me, this can't possibly be this hard sort of category.
No.
Joy.
I have a SharePoint list that I use to manage to do change management, and I wanted to just create a little button in that list with a little copy icon so that I can click it and it transfers to my clipboard all of the fields, so I can just send it in an email to the client.
Yep.
Julie could build that.
I can't. Yeah, I was gonna say everything seems to be custom solutions.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be able to do it with JSON formatting.
Yeah,
because you don't have that much control over the data.
You need a little JavaScript. You need JavaScript on the page for it, and the only way that I could think to do that easily was either a SharePoint Framework field customizer, or you probably could also do it. It's still SharePoint Framework. I'm trying to come up with a way that is not SharePoint Framework, but I don't think
browser extension.
But it's that's
be
even more complicated code. But you could do it with a command button where you have a SharePoint Framework command button, and then whenever you're selected, you press the copy button and it copies. But you need client-side code there to copy the information for sure. So it would be a small SharePoint Framework project.
Yeah,
a hard one, a very simple one, but still you'd need one.
I found a video by Reza Durrani that was showing Power Apps in a hover card, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And I spent like 2 hours trying to figure out how to make that work. And then after not being able to get that to work, I went back and looked at the video, and he pinned a top comment that says, "This is no longer supported."
actually, that I think there is a way to do this. You could add a button that triggers a flow, and then the flow does that work for you, because
but he wants it copied to a clipboard.
But not in the clipboard. Have it email it to you.
Oh, of course.
Or whatever.
Of course you can do that. But if you want it in your clipboard, that's not going to happen.
The clipboard thing, you would have to build something. But if you wanted to just get that data out into another container, in essence, that would work.
Yeah, and just as a broader category, just printing, stuff out of there.
Always been trouble.
It's mind-boggling how challenging it is. That's all.
A single item or the whole view?
A single item or a view, or almost anything, So, anywho's, love the show. Keep up the great work, guys.
Well, if people want that, then they'll probably not do it.
Right.
Because it's not Copilot.
Right.
Do we have an answer for Dan's question?
I'm just thinking about that right now. Yeah.
So for those not able to see the chat, and if you can't see the chat, it's because you're watching the recording. And if you're watching the recording, why aren't you here right now? Come to the next one. Those SharePoint list forms we recently got are pretty neat. However, I haven't found a way to see which of the potentially dozen forms a user has filled out. Have you found a cool workaround? That is a really good question.
Like which form they had a link to actually add data? Is that the idea?
I think what you'd have to do. You couldn't do it.
Dan, I guess where I would go with that would be because the SPFX forms are tied to the content type. You could have a different content type within the library with the same form, right?
Or you could have
the
a hidden
physical
field
form. And then you could I was going to say, then you could just remove the old content type. So you could have, you could rename the content type to 2023 and hide it, and then have, the new one. Then they're all.
What
if
the form just has a hidden field that gets submitted to a field in your list that's where did this source, like a source column, and then you could just have it hidden, and it's source is this, and so your SharePoint framework is source, and it writes a value
or if it's a time thing, you could just change the default for the year column to 2023 or 2024. But if you have multiple, I took it to be multiple actual forms. With forms, you can create more than one form.
Oh, I took it that way too. I guess I misunderstood. Oh, so you're talking about the default form versus whether they did a custom form. No, I'm not following.
Which form?
Forms,
Mark. We can't even get the question straight.
I'm going to come off mute here. So I'm talking the default form button that's now in lists.
Yes.
Where the user can create a form.
Yes.
But you can have multiple forms for the same list.
Correct.
But is there any way for me to tell which one of those forms the user was linked to? So
I don't think so. I don't think so at the moment.
And then
great question.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It seems like something that should be easy to do. And I had a client ask, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that we can do that, because I could add a field, but end up give it a default value, but then that applies to every form.
Krista?
Right. Yeah.
Can you add URL trackers to the form link? I don't know if you can append any of the links that come with the forms. I'm not sure if that's an option or not.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything to capture it though.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Okay.
All excellent questions. We are
you could have a field on the form, Dan, that says this value is, whatever, blue. Don't change this.
Yes,
that's a very sophisticated. That's a very sophisticated forms method.
But at that point, I can't set a default value for each form, so I'm at the same point, because then whenever I change it, all the existing forms will break.
Yeah, you're right. Never mind.
But good idea.
That's a tough question. That's a real tough question. We don't have an answer for that one. However, we have answers around learning pathways. So July 24th is our next episode. We just released into beta Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways V5. And so next episode, we're going to talk about V5, what's changed, what's new. There's some new features, so you're going to want to come to that one and hear about it, and some details around the lookbook. CS Live DC, as I mentioned earlier, Collab Days New England, our call for speakers is open, but we are looking for sponsors. So please, if you know of anybody who would like to sponsor us, we'd love to hear from you. And ESPC in Stockholm in December. And with that, our 100th episode is sadly over. We could have kept going, I can tell. We just had a great conversation. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you. And definitely come back for 101. It's going to be great. Talk to you all soon.
Bye,
thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.